Thank you. It has been so far a pleasure to be here. And I must say that I probably will going to talk about a little bit different angle that we have heard so far. So I'm an art historian, and I have actually studied and researched, made quite a long time, made different kind of writings and research on contemporary art and the art of 20th century. But about abstraction and about environmental art and so forth. And today I'm going to talk, for me also not so familiar topic, but something I have been involved in recently, and I'm going to continue. So this is the first kind of public presentation of these matters. So when we try to think life without end, we are easily learning or moving toward religion and the idea of eternal life. However, if we focus on life as such, not on the individual lifespan, but the idea, that has a beginning and an end, but the life of species, we might be able to think about life that does not end. If it's possible to call this endless life infinite is a question that automatically comes to mind. The very recent trend in contemporary art is to consider or study different conditions or stages of life and for life. On the one hand, synthetic or artificial, and on the other hand, biological life. One of the reasons behind this current intention, I suppose, is the crises that are going on in our world today. Crises that are as much ecological than economical, as well as political in nature. We seem to face such problems than how to carry life on this planet in the future, and what kind of the life the future will bring about, just to name some obvious ones. The other reason might be the fact that biotechnology is engineering our lives more and more today. One can say that synthetic biology, biotechnology, genomes are today's cultural icons. So, at the same time, however, biodiversity is reducing and the whole living world is in a big homogenization process, at least according to many. What I'm going to do is that I'm trying to follow a kind of ecological thinking in the art of the 20th century and early 2000s. And to be able to begin, I want to build up a background for my reflections on these matters related to infinity and ecology. What has ecology to do with the infinity? Let's listen what philosopher Timothy Morton has to say about this. This is a quite long quote from his book, The Ecological Thought. The ecological, I should have it here. Yeah. The ecological thought, in its full richness and depth, was unavailable to non-modern humans. Even now, over the brink indeed, of climate catastrophe, we are only just capable of glimpsing its magnitude and profundity. Any thinking that avoids this totality is part of the problem. So we have to face it. Something about modern life has prevented us from thinking totality as big as we could. Now we cannot help but think it. Totality looms like a giant skyscraper shadow into the flimsiest thought about, say, today's weather. We may need to think bigger than totality itself. If totality means something closed, something we can be sure of, something that remains the same. It might be harder to imagine 4 1.5 billion years than abstract eternity. It might be harder to imagine evolution than to imagine abstract infinity. It is a little humiliating. This concrete infinity directly confronts us in the actuality of life on Earth. Facing it is one of the profound tasks to which the ecological thought sums up. Quote end. So, it's about concrete infinity and about actuality of life. I'm going to focus now and try to talk a little bit. So, from a little bit historical point of view, life as such began to interest artists already earlier in the 1960s and 1970s. One of the well-known and widely known and good example, and especially important and relevant in our context today, would be Roman Opalka's work and his work from 1 to Infinity that he made from 1965 to until his death, 2011. And it's a series of painting where, it's an Infinity series, and it was this result of Opalka's decision that he made in 1965 to count to infinity and in turn paint each number in sequence. And by the time of his death, 2011, he had filled 233 canvases. They all are the same size and are inscribed with numbers drawn with near machine-like consistency. So each of these paintings, 233 paintings, they have contains like about 25,000 consecutive numbers. Each number that makes up these numbers is likely lighter than the previous one. So, and every day after he has finished working, he took one picture of himself, of his face, so that they are normally on display, both these paintings of numbers and beside Roman Opalka's face, pictures of self-portraits. So subsequently we have a history of Roman Opalka's aging appearance. So, but in Opalka's case, one can consider whether infinite here refers to eternal life or to the idea of potential endlessness of numbers. In other words, is it a mathematical infinite, or is it a biological, or even spiritual infinite? Opalka's work is about. And I don't have answer. But anyhow, it's a good example of these reflections that artists were making, or during those years quite a lot, and in several ways involving their own everyday living and life and their own body and its temporality into an art piece, so that these two became inseparable. And one of the advocates of this new art was Alan Kaproff, American artist and writer, who wrote in 50s already and 60s, but in 1979 he wrote an essay Performing Life, where he states, the quote, "A new art/life, a genre, therefore came about, reflecting equally the artificial aspects of everyday life and the lifelike qualities of creative art." Today, in 1979, I'm paying attention to breathing. I held my breath for years, held it for dear life, and I might have suffocated. I hadn't had to let go of it periodically. Was it mine, after all, letting it go? Did I lose it? Was exhaling simply a stream of speedy molecules squirting out of my nose? Quote end. So the art of the 1960s and 70s sought to search life outside the work of art and sought the metaphors and concepts that were located outside the artwork as well. It happened at the same time in performance art, where the movements of everyday life were used and studied. In the sculpture, where the acknowledgement of raw elemental materials and their durational space were taken into the core of sculpture. Or the connection between work of art and its location of display, such patterns of practice sought to break down the separation between the physical condition of the work of art and its capacity for allusion and reference. Here, by ecology, this art of 60s and 70s participated to the reconceptualization of the material world in the name of ecological change. And by ecology, I refer here widely both to the general understanding of the world, like concrete concerns about pollution and earth care, but also resource management as well as how information travels. One of the fundamental insights of ecology that has become very tangible when we move towards our time is that all forms of matter of our planet are connected to one another. And ecology has, of course, already long before 1960s, or a little bit longer, earlier, tried to find and make visible and understandable different models for this interconnection. So at the beginning, as you know, I don't know if these ecological ideas, of course, you are probably familiar with them. But anyhow, at the beginning of 1960s, there was two rival, or if not rival, at least alternative metaphors being behind ecological art. And one was, of course, biology, and the other was, of course, physical science. Art historian George Kubler writes in 1962 in his book The Shape of Time that perhaps system metaphors drawn from physical sciences would have plotted the situation of art more adequately than the prevailing biological metaphors. In short, the language of electrodynamics might have cited better than the language of botany. So, Kubler's comment about energy and transmission align closely with an understanding of ecosystems that was developing and actively discussed when he wrote the book. And his statement anticipated the intention of numerous artists that would soon after incorporate forms of energy in their works quite literally and directly. The radio waves and the use of lightning. However, along with the energy sources, artists sought to revise the relationship to the biological world as well. So instead of choosing one of these two, more adequate way would perhaps be to apply the marriage between these two systems of knowledge into art history of the 1960s and 70s. So, according to art historian Jane Nisbet, it was 2015, the book Biology, this is quote, "Biology did not give way to communications theories or cybernetics. Rather, from the 1960s onward, all of these fields were integrated as ecologies of information, which emerged as a powerful conception of social dynamics, plant life, and the work of art alike." So, at the early decades of 20th century, biology was seen as a master discipline, and soon ecologists began to explain their discipline as a complete study of interactions among all living things. So ethologists like Charles Adams talk about human ecology, by which he means the causes of and laws of change in the environment and in organisms, distinguishing the energies involved, the activity of the agents or the systems, their dynamic status, their relative optima, limiting factors, and the orderly sequence or succession of their internal and external changes. So biological interaction is extended to envelop social organization gradually as itself an ecological formation. Adams also paid attention to energies and systems which is also a sign that of the rising system theory that followed Second World War. Ecosystems as well was invented also during these early years of 20th century. So, and this, as I said, energy became a vital term, and with it an understanding of ecosystem as an interconnected formation that moves through organisms instead of emanating from them. And two theories that we know all were, in a way, set a kind of stage for an ongoing negotiation of the conceptualization of ecology in the latter half of the 20th century. And one was, of course, Norbert Wiener's theory of cybernetics, and the other was Ludwig von der Lamphey's general system theory. And they actually influenced artists quite literally and directly. The result of these workings and methods have been visible in the arts at least since the middle of the 1960s. Even early, as Caroline Jones has emphasized, that even Claude Monet's serial paintings can be seen as a kind of part of the system idea or system thinking. I here take up only two examples from the 1960s, one and another from the 1970s, that has been discussed quite largely recently. Here's something like, no. And Hans Haacke was a German-born American artist who made these so-called system works widely known in the middle of 1960s. These works were based on a mechanical idea of the system and were operating without a human intervention, and the invention was the stage, the absolute authority of non-human system. So Hans Haacke and his friend, system theorist Jack Burnham, developed an aesthetic that were almost clinically designed to eliminate the human from the affective perspective cycle. Haacke adopted system theory to his art through different stages. First, ecological systems and kind of mechanical systems, and then gradually the social systems. And systems art was initiated during a couple of years at the MIT, and then also Hans Haacke had an exhibition in MIT's Hayden Gallery with the system works he had made with the air and water, and like you see here with the grass and seeds. And this is images from the 1911 when they remade the exhibition in MIT. So 1967, Haacke was reflecting on the autonomy of the systems he was then interrogating. And he made clear that nature should be known and understood to her processes, not forms. So Haacke's system artworks in 1967 were, as Caroline Jones put it, positioned explicitly as being outside standard aesthetic discourse involving emotion, interpretation, culture, and memory. System worked to eliminate human factors altogether. Hans Haacke's perhaps best known work is so-called condensation cube, it's a very good and telling example. The work was called first weather cube at the beginning, but then he made another other version and called it condensation cube. The idea of this work, as well as many other he made during those years, was that the work function or works without human action or creation. Condensation cube is a system that continues as long as there are living organisms in the world. Maybe condensation is supposed to happen on the surface of the object and not like the weather, which is happening, of course, in the atmosphere. So one would say that the work is going as long as there are life around it. Whatever is the situation, and that is not my aim to discuss about climate today, one thing is clear that the condensation's internal weather theater is possible only because of the temperature of the gallery space is right and because the heat that is caused by the visitors of the gallery space. So Hake's work was then, after all, not self-contained system, but actively cooperating with the world outside and making these kind of ecological connections visible. So other work by our Kaprov that I want to take up is titled Ecology from the 1975. And the work takes as a starting point the concept of total art that Kaprov had developed earlier in the 1950s and 60s. The idea of total art consists everything in itself. The ecosystem was thought to be a kind of complete and self-defining, closed system that followed Niklas Luhmann's idea of system that is integral, internal entity that has an operating closure, and everything that exceeds this is called environment. As ecology that is described here. Also, many of the environmental works in the 1970s attempts to reject this wholenessness in favor of ecologies that are distinctly partial and interwoven. So Kaprov's ecology is one example of this new idea of interwovenness of environment, ecosystem, and ourselves. So Kaprov and a group of friends made the performance in the weekend, May 1975, in Far Hills, New Jersey. And Kaprov described the work. Ecology is concerned with natural processes. As gas-soaked rag is evaporated in stages on its trip upstream, becoming relatively clean as it gives its fumes to the atmosphere and further chemical chains, human breaths are collected and conducted downstream by hand. Small bits escapes to the environment, writes Kaprov. So eco here refers to back and forth movement, but also perhaps even more seriously to the reflective notion that was absent in closed system works. The eco refers to cycles of water, cycles of energy, cycles of gases that subtly blur the distinction between natural and engineering processes. So it happens that system works were forgotten for about 40 years until 2011, and MIT remade Hake's work, and along with that, ecology became a fashionable concept because of the ecological crisis and, for example, mass extinction of the species. So today, Hake's works are actively discussed, and also other works from this period has been discovered that were before quite unknown. So art historians are doing their job. Today, ecology has transformed, but also multiplied in the use of the artist. And so-called bioart has grown enormously or become enormously popular art in many levels. One of the obvious traits in the current ecological discourses is that ecology does not mean nature, as Timothy Morton has so convincingly argued. He, for example, slogan, in order to have ecology, we have to let go of nature. In artistic practice, this contemporary idea of ecology also means that mechanical and biological are not seen as separated and distinguished from each other, but as collaborating and making things together. I have 2 examples here how artist has been reacting or working with these new ideas. And the first one is the French artist Pierre Huy, who has been working with these concepts and ideas already a couple of years' time in different youth projects he has made. For example, in Documenta Kassel 5 years ago, and Metropolitan Museum in New York also a couple of years ago. This summer we made a huge installation in Münster Sculpturprojekt that is called After Our Life Ahead or After the Life Ahead, to which I now focus for a while. He built an alien or strange, very weird environment, installation to the old ice skating rink that seems secretly to be full of life, and that operates according to its own random and accidental schedule. The concrete floor of the rink has been sliced apart and the ground dug up so that visitors can descend along clay pathways that are interrupted by pools of water with algae. Just when you began to get used to the space, a bustling sound emanates from up above, and sleek panels that you see here on the right side open from the otherwise closed ceiling, exposing the room to the sky. First you think that the ring is functioning according to the programming system, until you start to realize that everything that happens in the space is because of some living organisms are reacting to something. So every action or happening in the space is a result of the consequence of something. The inner world of the ring reveals to be a chain of consequences to be called interactive systems. At the center of the space, up on the cement platform, is an aquarium with glass that can shift from clear to black. It contains a poisonous sea snail, a cornus textile, which moves a cell with an intricate pattern that is an example of cellular automata. That organism is very tiny, but it plays a key role in the exhibition. This is what huge Pierre Huy has described. We studied the shell, which is made out of small and large kind of triangle shapes, and that becomes the score that either opens or switches off the glass. The pattern also generates sound, and as the glass switches on or off, it triggers the opening or closing of the pyramids that are on the ceiling. And beside this aquarium, there are also other systems in the piece. They are perhaps more elusive. An incubator, right side, holds cancer cells whose rate of growth is determined by various measurements that sensors are taking of the space, which is also home for the bees that are living in that clay hut. Or yes, as cancer cells change here, the right side. They guide the behavior of black shapes that appear in the augmented reality app that actually was here in the first here. Reality app that visitors can download on their phones. What you have there is really a network of self-organizing systems, Huy has said. They are in constant displacement. They grow, they evolve, they shift. There is no master-slave in that regard. They shift constantly. So the After Our Life Ahead is an artwork that is closely slowly transforming into something else, moving away from its creator and only giving off little glimpses of its operations as it evolves. Sculptor project has now closed, but the rain will keep flowing, and algae will still grow, and the landscape will continue to change. There is no telling what it looks like today. I'm interested in letting, in a certain way, self-organizing systems try either to find or not to find a symbiosis. Ui said. I try my best not to intervene with them. Pierre Huyghe's work thrives on the friction that results from the interaction of planet system and the allotoric actions that can occur with them once they are allowed to function. Although he's not trying to continue the work forever, that's his open intention, deliberately said, it's not his intention. Infinity is somehow hinted, or the kind of came to mind, or endlessness of this process. So he also said that the museum is a place of separation, and I need a place for continuity. That is why he chose this ring. So the name After a Life, or After a Life Ahead, is a kind of a riddle. You can try to open it in several ways. One thing, however, is sure, that it makes an allusion to the life that doesn't end. Is it the life after the dead, or is it the life or artificial life that is also ahead of us in the future, or what it means, I don't know, but anyhow, it's a kind of up to us to decide. So my last example is Belgian artist, contemporary artist that has based on his working method and his whole artistic production in one project, and that is the continuation of life, and that I am now going to focus on here. The Belgian artist's name is Koen van Mechelen, or Van Mechelen, and since the late 1990s, Van Mechelen in the late 1990s, Van Mechelen initiated to study cultural and biological biodiversity by breeding chickens from around the world. The crossbreeding program is titled Cosmopolitan Chicken Project, so-called CCP. And if I remember right, actually it's very, there's something mysterious going on just today. So if I remember right, there's now is it 23rd generation of chickens that he has crossbreeded. Here is only 16 or how many? The family tree. His project is massive, both in the geographical, in the biological, and as well as in the cultural sense. Besides the crossbreeding of chickens, so cultural directed biology, he also takes a stance to the ideological and political notions of, for example, nation state, borders, all kinds of borders, and races. He says, with the CCP, I explore the boundaries of our existence and try to discover the symbiosis where all organisms meet. In other words, what is the impact of domestication on our evolution, and how do we deal with it? But why chicken of all the possible creatures? Because it is the most domesticated animal in the world, and this is based on numbers. We have 65 billion chickens in the world and 300 billion eggs every moment of the day. So the first chicken in the world is coming from Himalayas, and it's called red jungle fowl. It has bred around the world. Over time, these genies have risked to become too isolated, and genes too narrow to remain sustainable. First crossbreeding has made between Belgium, what it's called, Mechele's Couecook with the France Boulet de Paris in 1999. And yes. Van Mekelen's Cosmopolitan Chicken Project collects the genes from different chicken varieties into cosmopolitan genome. The aim of Van Mekelen is not to get some superior traits or efficiency, but to maximize their overall genetic diversity. Van Mekelen has found that each new generation is more resilient than its parents. They live longer, have less diseases, and behave less aggressive. So the crossing has resulted in new strains that show a significantly increased potential for gene transcription and expression. He has come to conclude that crossbreeding is practical but also ethical duty and philosophical necessity for the whole society and world to go on. Mechelen project is a contemporary example of system art, but as we see, the systems work only if it's fed from outside, so that it works together with the environment. But does Van Mekelen's work allow to continue forever and endless, so can it be called infinite? In very practical terms, no, because there are limited number of chicken species in the world that can be involved to the project. But in the symbolical or metaphorical level, the project allows us to think life as infinite. Life that does not cease or terminate, but continue infinitely. This might give a new tone to the word infinity, or would the more proper or right word to describe this endless reproduction to be continuity. But then, what continue? Life itself? Chicken, humankind, mankind, or what? I don't know. But perhaps generations to come, and in that sense, life as such. And here is the Van Mekelen's some other works like painting and sculptures. He made glass sculptures of these eggs, and there is this painting where is these letters or words, new generation. And what is really surprising, and this is a big secret now, I'm telling you, that this morning at 8 o'clock in Finland, in middle of Finland, there has been a new generation of CCP. And I just today, at 8:15, I got a new an image from Finland that is first Finnish cosmopolitan chicken born, which is an amazing thing because it has been a big project, because you are not allowed to take chickens out of Finland or into the Finland, so you have to carry these eggs to make this crossbreed. So, thank you.